before. Even though most of us working, currently 59% of all Americans living paycheck to paycheck, and almost 50 million Americans are living in poverty. Now, I wonder, are you going to hear that on Sean Hannity? I guarantee you won't. But, amazingly, you did hear it pretty much daily with Obama in office. That's part of the game. In a desperate attempt to continue their middle-class lifestyles, many Americans have been piling up mountains of debt, and it has gotten to the point where we have a major crisis on our hands. According to the New York Post, the total amount of debt that U.S. households have accumulated is about to cross the $14 trillion mark for the first time ever, including mortgages and student loans, some $1 trillion higher than during the Great Recession of 2008. Credit card debt of $1 trillion also exceeds the 2008 peak. Americans are spending heavily again, and often recklessly, say analysts. Snyder says this is the exact opposite of what U.S. consumers should be doing. We can see signs of a fresh economic slowdown all around us, and consumers should be feverishly trying to get out of debt as fast as they can. But instead, debt levels just keep setting record after record. In fact, total student loan debt just hit a brand new record high of $1.6 trillion, and auto loan debt just hit a brand new record high of $1.174 trillion. It would be one thing if we could handle all this debt, but that isn't the case. Bankruptcies have been steadily rising, and according to the latest figures, the number of bankruptcy filings shot up another 5% in the month of July. 5% higher in July of this year than in June of this year. And about slightly higher number of bankruptcies in either in this month or up to this period this year than they were last year. Snyder says the problem, unfortunately, is just beginning. Most of the country is living on the edge financially, and so a major economic slowdown would inevitably cause another enormous tsunami of consumer bankruptcies like we saw in 2008. Even now, things are already so bad that many hardworking, quote, middle-class workers in high-cost cities such as New York are so financially stretched that they have to rely on free food from local food banks. Now, these are working people. These are so-called middle-class Americans that are having to go to the food bank in New York, which obviously the cost of living is sky high there, but in New York, just to eat. Just to eat. And this, while things are supposedly relatively stable, imagine when we have a true recession. And I'll tell you, right now, pay attention. You're seeing and hearing, and you're going to see and hear more whispers of recession in the mainstream media, the same mainstream media that has had their part in talking about how great the economy has been. Now they're going to be talking recession, and I'll guarantee you at some point it's coming around the corner, probably at a time in which most people are simply caught unawares, again, asleep. Snyder says U.S. consumers simply do not have a lot of discretionary income to spend these days, and this is killing major retailers all over the nation. We are on pace to absolutely shatter the all-time record for store closings in a single year, and within the past 7 days, more big retailers have announced that they will be permanently shutting down stores. Walgreens is a pharmacy, and we can talk about big pharma. I'm certainly no fan, but still, people need their medicine, or at least they buy their medicine and their prescriptions without a doubt. Walgreens is going to be closing approximately 200 U.S. stores. And it goes on, some of these, Party City closing more stores than expected in 2019. New Jersey-based Party Supplies Company said it was looking to close 55 stores throughout the year, up 10 from the May estimate of 45 stores. And you can read, or if you've been following this, you know how tough it's been for retailers. Sears, pretty much gone. Kmart, pretty much gone. Elder Beerman's, pretty much gone. J.C. Penney's is going to be pretty much gone. Macy's, I believe, is struggling. Subway restaurants are being closed in pretty large numbers. Around here in my area, we're seeing IHOPs be closed because they can't stay open. They can't afford to stay open financially. We're seeing Steak and Shakes get closed down for the same reason, all while the economy is supposedly booming and doing so well. Now, there's also this. Mounting recession fears. There's that word, R word, from markets.businessinsider.com. Mounting recession fears have pushed consumer sentiment to the second lowest level of Trump's presidency. Americans became less optimistic. Now, it does say not necessarily pessimistic, but less optimistic about the economy this month as uncertainty surrounding trade and other policies weighed on their outlook. A recent interest rate cut could have underscored concerns about a potential downturn. Richard Curtin, chief economist of the survey, trade concerns were cited by 33% of all consumers in the weeks after President Donald Trump said that he would slap tariffs on all remaining imports from China. And the trade war it panics the markets. It concerns people. Tariffs affect American people in real ways, American consumers in real ways, and in terms of higher prices on the goods, on the items that they buy. And, it is interesting to note then that now, most recently, you've had Donald Trump say, well, we'll go ahead and we'll delay these tariffs for the Christmas shopping season, or as we get closer to the Christmas shopping season. Well, as somebody pointed out on Facebook, if tariffs are so positive or are not harmful, why do we have to delay them? Because we're worried that they're going to interfere people's Yuletide joy and happiness during the Christmas season. Well, because again, it's a strain on people's pocketbooks. You look at the government that is continually spending. What are we seeing? We're seeing plenty. And again, this has been consistent. You're seeing plenty of income, you're seeing more than enough tax revenue. You're hearing reports, we're hearing reports, reading reports, one can, of record tax revenues. And yet, what are they doing with record tax revenues? Record spending. Record deficits. This from Yahoo Finance, U.S. budget deficit already exceeds last year's total figure. Now, the fiscal calendar is different than our calendar. I think the fiscal year runs October to October or something like that. But, so they're 10 months into the fiscal year. The deficit in those 10 months is over $850 billion, $866.8 billion federal government in the first 10 months of the fiscal year, up 27% from the same period a year earlier, and also, again, higher than the entire deficit for the 12-month fiscal year of, again, their fiscal year is a little different, but fiscal year 2018 or 2017, whatever it would be. We've had a revenue increase, this article says, of 3%, but we've had a spending increase of 8%. Tariffs actually have been a modest source of income. But again, here's the thing. What about tariffs? It's a tax on the people. It leads to increased prices. And at the same time, even if it's bringing income into the Treasury, if you're spending at a rate more than double of what you're taking in, 8% increase, or if your spending increase is more than double, almost triple your revenue increase, you're not getting anywhere. at all. Needless to say, I think we can all figure that out. The annual budget deficit, now these numbers change, but is expected to exceed $1 trillion starting in 2022, according to the CBO. And so it is that, again, you have a refusal, an inability and a refusal to put a cap on spending. Now, what else does, in the midst of all this, as people are experiencing record levels of debt, as half the country or better is living paycheck to paycheck, what does the president want to do now, or what is he perhaps very much for? From Reuters, a Facebook friend had posted this, had shared this. He backs 25 cents a gallon federal gasoline tax hike, according to Senator Tom Carper. Now, I don't know who Senator Tom Carper is. I didn't look to see who he is. I don't know if he's a Republican. I don't know. Well, actually, it says he's a Democrat lawmaker. But this saying President Trump endorsed hiking the federal gasoline tax by 25 cents a gallon. Now, if I'm reading this right, as somebody who drives easily, quite often 200 miles or more a day in my own car, I don't like to see gasoline tax hikes at all. We had one here in Ohio that went up at like 10.5 cents, and that took effect on July 1st. The current federal gasoline tax is 18.4 cents a gallon, and it's been that since 1993. Now, if I'm reading this right, I wouldn't happily take a 25 cent a gallon tax, federal tax of 25 cents a gallon on gasoline, but raising it to 25 cents a gallon would be one thing. If I'm reading it right, this is talking about raising it by 25 cents a gallon, which would make it basically 43.5 cents a gallon federal gas tax. That's going to kill people like me and some of my co-workers who use their own vehicles. That's going to kill just anybody who has to fill their own gas tank. And people, I'll guarantee people will be driving a lot less if and when and where they could. But that's going to be another hit in the pocketbook. And by the way, like I said, when it comes to who really controls the economy, I mentioned Brandon Smith, altmarket.com. I think I posted this on the American Faith Today Facebook page. I could post it again. But there's an editor's note on an article. And I believe he is right on it. Right on it. He writes, the most important and underlying secret of the trade war is that both the U.S. and China are controlled elements. Meaning, the globalists dictate the policy actions of both governments. The trade war is a farce, a distraction away from the global economic reset that the banking elites have now set in motion. The trade war is supposed to be the catalyst or scapegoat for the crash of global markets and the end of the U.S. dollar's world reserve status. This is a crash the central bank started over 10 years ago, and now it is about to accelerate into a major crisis. However, the globalists do not intend to take the blame for this crisis. The trade war will not end until the crash has done maximum damage, because that is exactly what the globalists want to happen. And indeed, you have Donald Trump. He is controlled. The government is controlled by the globalists, as again it would be even written in these times, as we are in the end times. And they are setting Donald Trump up to be the fall guy. And this same guy, Brandon Smith, has written that they are setting up populists and nationalists to be the fall guy, to be the scapegoat, to take the blame for the economic collapse, because if the anti-globalist, or those who would claim, or those who represent themselves as anti-globalist, as nationalists, as populists, if they are on watch when the economy collapses, collapses,